A handful of months ago, right here on this channel, we said that President William Samoei Ruto had lost the support of his greatest ally, the people who were most responsible for making him president. He had lost their support. Of course, I'm talking about the United States of America. And the response from most Kenyans? Ndoto za mchana, stories za jaba za kumekucha. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. Well, in recent days, the mainstream media in Kenya has picked up that story. And they have persistently been drumming it into us that hiyo support Ruto alipoteza. And that may still not be conclusive for many Kenyans. However, a few hours ago, all the way from Kansas City in the United States of America, we got the conclusive details and evidence that indeed that relationship is over. And this information came from somebody some Kenyans don't like, Wamunyoro, former Deputy President Rigathi Gashagua. Now, I'm not naive, and I know that many of us, government bloggers, have pushed us blindly into a spot where we believe we're all being asked to vote for Rigathi Gashagua as the next president of Kenya. Hiyo sijasikia, but that's what some Kenyans believe. What? But from where I sit, I value the information coming through this former deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. Why? Because he's an insider. He was an insider. He was there. There is a huge difference, even as a journalist, from receiving information from somebody who's on the inside observing, and the situation here where an insider, somebody who was there, gives us that information. Anyway, super fascinating is the fact that the main reasons why Kasongo has fallen out with the Americans, you will not find it on mainstream media. You will not find it anywhere. The real reason, what are the political reasons? Because you know, even international partners of Kenya are politicians, and they behave like politicians. Politicians will say the right thing all the time, while behind the scenes, they are the real issues they are fighting and dealing with. That's normal. For us to understand this, and to understand just how serious this crisis is for Ruto, we must go very deep into those reasons you will hardly hear or rarely hear spoken of on any media, especially on mainstream media. Of course, one of the reasons for this is that this is hypersensitive. Okay? And I will give you those shell-shocking reasons in a minute. But maybe I can just summarize and tell you what they're about. They're about the Al-Shabaab, yes. They're about the RSF, the Rapid Response Forces in the Sudan conflict. And they're also about, wait for this one, the issuing of ID cards in the former Northern Frontier District by the Ruto administration. Those are the factors that lead to the main reason why President William Samoei Ruto is now in very bad books with Uncle Sam. But first, I think it is critical that we're all on the same page and we understand how the friends of Kenya, powerful Western nations, usually deal with Kenya and Kenyan problems chini ya maji. That one is critical for us to understand. And I believe the quickest way of doing that is through the following super fascinating story of something that happened in our country. Yeah? Before. The moral of this story, and this is so important to grasp, is that usually these foreign powers do not want us to know what they're thinking. That is very key. And number two, many times they will do something that will catch everybody completely by surprise. That is how they operate. It is very important for us to understand that. And you'll fully see that in this super fascinating tale of what happened in our dear motherland once upon a time, leaving mysteries which some have not even been able to solve to this day. But when I'm done with what I'm about to say, all those mysteries will be solved. Kenya, a few years into independence, many people used to say that Jomo used to fear Tom Mboya. And most Kenyans did not understand why Jomo feared Mboya. He's the president. Mboya is nothing. Yes, Mboya is popular. He's a major politician in the country. But Jomo is the president. What's the big deal? Actually, Jomo feared Mboya's backers. Those people who are behind Mboya, which of course was Uncle Sam. We even know Mboya's handler, because Mboya was an asset of ile idara ya ujasusi huko Amerikani. And we even know the name of his handler, William X. Scheinman. Okay? This is not a rumor. This is not an allegation. But this is something that was proved beyond any reasonable doubt by confidential documents released in the United States of America, I believe in the year 2017, which I shared on this channel. Anyway, let's stay on point here. Now, the mystery of July 5th, 1969, that was the Saturday day in 1969 that Tom Mboya was assassinated on the streets of Nairobi. The big mystery here for many was, why did the Americans say nothing? Why were they so quiet? Why didn't they cause chaos? Because one of the most trusted, key, effective people in the country called Kenya had been gotten rid of in such a brutal manner. Why? The real answer to that question is in a meeting that took place sometime in the year 1969, the early part of the year. And that meeting was between Jomo Kenyatta, President of Kenya, the US ambassador to Kenya at the time, and another cabinet minister called Njoroge Mungai, actually Dr. Njoroge Mungai, who was a nephew to Jomo. Now, in retrospect, we can understand that at the time this meeting was taking place, the Americans were very jittery about their man Tom Mboya. Why? Because virtually everybody who mattered knew that he was working with the Americans. Okay? Now obviously these major foreign powers are not comfortable when you can see the people they're working with. I hope I don't need to repeat that one, because it is so important and it is still relevant today. Let me just leave it at that. Okay? And then also, these powerful nations are not interested in regime changes. Those are expensive, they are uncertain, there is so much chaos, they are messy, etc., etc. Their number one interest is to push forward the agenda in the easiest, most peaceful way possible. Of course, they get involved in regime changes, but that is usually a drastic move. Yeah? And the decision is usually made when there are no other options on the table. For instance, there was no way that Washington were going to make a quick decision. Let's replace Jomo with Tom Mboya. Let's do it quickly. Pop, regime change. No, it doesn't work like that. And in this instance, the Americans found an easier way. Very sad and very unfortunate for Mboya, who had done so much for them. They found an easier and quicker way to achieve the objectives. And that was one of the reasons for this meeting that took place in 1969, the early part of that year, between Jomo and the US envoy to Kenya at the time, with Njoroge Mungai present. The Americans had decided to shelve momentarily their rivalry with a very close ally, the United Kingdom, over control on the nation called Kenya. And they decided to work with Jomo Kenyatta, who had a fairly stable regime. And it was decided that the new contact person would be Dr. Njoroge Mungai, and that is why he was present at this meeting. Just think about it for a minute. If you are the Americans, how would you quickly get your things done? Through Mboya, whom the government already feared, or through Njoroge Mungai, who was a member of the inner circle, the Kiambu Mafia, if you like, very close to Kenyatta, even related to him? Who would get things done quicker and more efficiently? The answer is a no-brainer, as the Americans themselves will put it. Now, it is also useful to note the fact that at the time of this meeting, the acting Foreign Affairs Minister was a man called Mbiu Koinange, who was acting in that capacity after the passing on of the Foreign Affairs Minister, Agwing's Kodek. And today we know for a fact that Bwana Kodek did not die from a road accident, as initially reported. He was assassinated, as confirmed by government papers released when Kibaki came into power. Anyway, let's stay on point. Now, very, very instructive. Shortly after this meeting, guess who was appointed as the permanent Minister of Foreign Affairs? Can you guess? Dr. Njoroge Mungai. There you have it. It is quite possible that Tom Mboya left the world of the living without knowing that his friends, the Americans, had abandoned him. Although I'm guessing his handlers may have known, but maybe did not communicate to him directly. Actually, they were not supposed to, even if they knew. Yeah, that would be betraying their country, betraying their employer. But it is super fascinating that Mboya's biographer, Professor David Goldsworthy, in his epic book on Mboya, has a section where he tells us about a meeting where Bwana Scheinman, his handler, and others advised Mboya to improve his personal security, to get extra security. I find that super, super fascinating, and to me it is instructive. Especially when you consider the fact that Bwana Scheinman developed a very close relationship with Mboya and his family. In fact, Scheinman left very strict instructions that when he passed on, he should be buried right next to his friend Mboya. And indeed that is what happened when he passed on in 1999 at the age of 72, here from kidney failure. His remains were transported, flown in all the way from New York, and traveled along the potholed roads of Kenya, right down to Rusinga Island, where they were buried right next to Mboya, according to his wishes. Even the Mboya family attended his funeral in New York. Friends, kunaendanga hivyo. But now very quickly back to those reasons why Kasongo has fallen out with Uncle Sam, which were exposed so eloquently by Wamunyoro in Kansas City, United States of America. No wonder Ruto handlers fear Wamunyoro so much. No wonder Ruto handlers are so concerned about Wamunyoro. No wonder. Hey, this guy knows too much. And this guy is doing a lot of damage to the Ruto administration, clearly. Reason number one, the decision of the Ruto administration to do away with vetting of the Somali community in the Northern Frontier District before issuing them with IDs, national identity cards. This one is actually a concern of U.S. security boys. Why? The short answer is that it is a threat to American lives. How so? Think about it. Well, it is very easy for a terror suspect to cross the border, get a Kenyan ID, and then next get a Kenyan passport and travel out of the country and easily enter any Western country and easily enter the United States of America and do harm to American lives. Reason number two, Ruto's close links with the RSF in Sudan. Now here it can get very confusing, very, very confusing. So let us slow down and break it down. We know that the civil war in Sudan is happening between the government forces, the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the rebel group, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF. Now, the Sudanese Armed Forces are receiving support from Russia and Iran. It is a no-brainer that Uncle Sam cannot be on that side. We know that the RSF is being financed and supported, it is not a secret, it is information in the public domain, by the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. But many experts on this matter agree that Dubai must have a friend, an ally, from the Western countries. Chini ya maji, of course, we shall not mention any country. But also there is a suspicion that Kenya has been cooperating with that Western country, whatever country that is, to help the RSF. So, why would the Americans suddenly be very, very upset about Ruto's link with the RSF? Well, Wamunyoro hinted at the reason. Let me put it this way. You can be helping somebody, but then your personal interests and your personal profits supersede the help you're giving to that other person. And therefore they feel that they can continue the operations without you. I believe that is what has happened in this instance. And it is also a very clever political move to distance oneself from a mess, a civil war in another country, for anybody who may want to accuse this country of involvement. Don't you think? Never forget, it is always politics. It is always about the politics, and very important, it is always about the money. And don't forget that point I gave earlier on, that these people do not like people to know who they are working with. They don't like that, because that is exposing them, especially for their chini ya maji moves, which is what they mostly do. Reason number 3, according to Wamunyoro, is the link with the Al-Shabaab. Wamunyoro claims that Ruto actually met members of Al-Shabaab, is actually doing business with Al-Shabaab. Now we know Al-Shabaab is doing a lot of business, which has made many Kenyans rich, like importing stuff through the Kismayu port. And then it is smuggled into Kenya through Garissa, etc., etc. We know that. That is information in the public domain. And again, links with this group would endanger American lives. Now, for those who are very well informed, you will already know that the relationship between the Al-Shabaab and the Americans is complicated. Let me just leave it at that. Some of this stuff is highly sensitive. Even Wamunyoro, there are many things he could not say. And I believe I cannot also say. But I am sure you're reading between the lines and understanding what we're dealing with here. Bottom line, the very close relationship between Ruto and the Americans that was most responsible for propelling him into the presidency, hiyo kwisha maneno. What does that mean politically at home here in Kenya? It means that Ruto kwisha maneno. It is only a matter of time before Ruto is gone away from the presidency. That should be obvious. Because if the major power supporting you is suddenly not supporting you, it's like standing on a pillar and then the next minute that pillar you're standing on is no longer there and you have nowhere else to stand. And therefore the only way you can go is down. I think that should be very clear. Only a matter of time. Tupende, tusipende, it is now only a matter of time. And for anybody who wants to predict what will happen, always remember that these powerful nations will always choose the easiest, neatest, most reliable way of getting the agenda moving forward. Period. And so, please let us not get pipe dreams of action movies, of revolutions, etc., etc. No, never ever. I will of course keep you very well informed, yeah, of these shocking new developments, yeah, which are telling us clearly that ahead of us there is a lot of uncertainty and definitely change is coming. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a change we want, but change is definitely coming. Now, very quickly before I go, I am sure I've piqued the interest of many of you by mentioning details on Tom Mboya, okay? And therefore I'd like to offer my epic, classic documentary titled Mboya, It Was More Than an Assassination, which has all this information, super fascinating information. And I'm going to throw it into my very latest offer, yeah, the Mutula ebook on how Mutula was murdered and why. You see, they're connected, yeah, because the skill set that took Mutula's life was not locally available. It is still not locally available. I'm sure you get my meaning. So I'm going to throw in this epic documentary, one of the best I've ever done. Yeah, very detailed. Even gives you the name of the shooter, yeah, which I believe nobody else has. Okay? It took me over 15 years of research on and off to get the information in this documentary. Okay? So I'm going to throw it into this current package that has the Mutula book, videos linked to that ebook, as well as 2 special reports very relevant to what we're discussing here. And the price for that is only Kenya shillings 19.99. And therefore I urge you to take advantage of this offer. It is definitely not going to be there for a long time. This is highly sensitive information. You can see details on your screens right now. Just use the usual telephone number or use that email address for PayPal, and you'll have this information pop in your inbox. Please don't forget to text me your email immediately after payment. Yeah. The things happening in the motherland. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.